round of season action here for the FTF Grand National Series with new sponsorship this year presented by Bar Visuals for the running of the Heifer's Country Kitchen 200. And when it was all said and done, this process, Justin, has been about a week. 139 drivers, if you can believe it or not, took a time in qualifying a week ago to try to make it to tonight. We've already had some consolation races, but this is the main event and how a series that saw so much success last year is getting kicked off tonight.
So many big names ended up going home as a result of that qualifying session that we've seen be very competitive last season or across the iRacing platform, from Alan Ballacino to Caden Rush to many others across the field. Arnold Diallo is someone who comes up to mind. Many veterans across iRacing like Malik Ray or Trevor Perry. It was difficult to get your way into the show, but tonight it's about proving that you can start off the season on a strong note. This is a difficult track to start things off at because you never know what can happen when it comes to the potential of incidents, when it comes to the potential of the strategy, and of course, when it comes to the potential of how things can finish out. It's going to be an intense race tonight, to say the very least, to see who can come away with the checker flag to start off the season on a winning note and with momentum already in the points column.
That is certainly the case. And of course, FTF taking full advantage of everything that this simulation has to offer. These drivers were actually qualifying on the older version of the Daytona International Speedway just a week ago, just to make it that extra challenge. But of course, you look out of the back straightaway, you see the grandstands that are replaced by those sponsorship signs, and of course the building of the stadium that is now present in iRacing on the front straightaway to make this one of the more beautiful facilities that we have to race in the United States of America. But of course, like you mentioned, a lot of big names, perhaps none more highlighted, Justin, than I think Malik Ray, of course, eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series star. He does not qualify for this field, but looking at the qualifying times, it was really a story of just two drivers, that being Jordan Worth and Sean Butler out of this field of contenders, who were the only drivers in this field, again, out of 139 entries to reach the 0.4 second bracket on the time charts, a 49.48 for our top two.
Some wicked quick times, and I know there was a lot of fanfare with them being the top qualifiers. Jordan Worth, keep in mind, on top of doing his broadcasts, is also one of iRacing's more competitive drivers, especially in fixed setup races. You normally see him outrun eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers whenever you see him in the field, especially in top split competition. For Sean Butler, also someone very quick, looking to try and improve himself in 2021. Also somebody that's going to be interesting to watch here, keep in mind. So this is going to be fun to see how both of them do tonight up the front. But keep in mind, the drivers just behind him are going to be very busy trying to figure themselves out too. You have drivers from Timo Toika to Derek Justice to Michael Cozy Jr. to Sam Adams to AJ Henderson among your top competitors alone. And don't forget about the drivers mixed in the field as well, from Josh Parker to Michael Frisch, who's had a lot of success here, to Brian Mercurio, who all put in strong qualifying laps and are scattered amongst the field. It's going to be a stacked field, to say the least, tonight.
It is, and of course, we'll walk you through some changes that have been going over the offseason here at FTF. Of course, last season, many of you remember coming out on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern and looking at some of the biggest stars competing in this field every Saturday night, the FTF Grand National Series. Well, this season, the Cup Series is finally moving on after so many successful years running in NASCAR Racing 2003 season. The FTF Cup Series is finally taking place here in iRacing on Sunday night. So with this being the lone series that was utilizing the iRacing simulation last season, they moved forward to this year, and with that, a new set of rules where, of course, some of these drivers that are moving on to the Cup Series, which is slated to be, I guess you would say, the premier series here at FTF this season, there are going to be limited starts for some of these drivers that are running full-time in the Cup Series or their iRating is of a certain number. So with this GNS series, a bit of a new look here in 2021, Justin.
It's a chance to develop some talent, to say the least. As a result, it's going to be interesting how some of the drivers show themselves at the high levels, because keep in mind, many different teams are going to be keeping an eye on things for how these drivers compete against one another in terms of speed, in terms of racecraft, in terms of everything else. This is a chance for many drivers to prove that they belong up at the front of the field for many different races. It's going to be fun to see who takes some of these checker flags this season, especially with some of the talent here and some of the names who I think are going to be some ones to watch to develop as time goes on throughout the campaign.
That's certainly right. And of course, if you want to tune in not only to tonight, but tomorrow night, the FTF Cup Series going to be on bottom split with myself, Sean Butler, and Sam Watson, my other broadcast partners who are taking place in this race tonight. So it should be an exciting season of FTF competition that I think we were talking a little bit before we went on air, Justin, about. You mentioned the amount of stars that are in this lineup and the big leap it was for this league to move forward into iRacing. But I think, me personally, and again, this is just an opinion, that of all the series on iRacing, including the stars of the Coca-Cola series, I don't know if there's a more stout or just packed series that is going to be out there, particularly on the private side of things. When you think about the league racing and iRacing, I think what FTF is going to have to offer, not only this weekend, but throughout this season as we move onward from Daytona here after this weekend, is going to be one of the best that the service has to offer.
I 100% agree with you on that, because there are so many big names who competed and came up through the ranks, mind you, from NR 2003, like Justice, like drivers, like we've seen Mercurio in the past and talk about in the past. This is going to be a fun 2021 for FTF, and it's going to be difficult to move your way into victory lane in this series. If you win here, you can win anywhere potentially if you prove yourself in this type of a series.
You certainly can, and we'll save the talking here for just a moment as we're finally going to set the starting grid for you here for tonight's Heifer's Country Cafe 200. And as mentioned before, Jordan Worth and Sean Butler on the front row, the only drivers who were able to get into that 49.4 second bracket on the chart. Again, this was qualifying that took place last Saturday night. Of course, Timu, Fast Timu as they call him, he's going to be starting on the inside of row number 2. And of course, the rookie to the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, Derek Justice, going to start to his outside. Caden Rush will roll off from 5th. Michael Cozy Jr., he was a part of the championship battle in the GNS Series last season. He will start in 6th. 7th to go to AJ Henderson. Mike McConville is in 8th. Rich Jamison 9th. And Warren Rosario will round out the top 10.
Adam Sweet starts 11th tonight in the Lads Racing Team machine, while Ryan Naraki will have a bit of a different number placement for tonight. Will start in 12th. Andrew Schwartz starts in 13th position, while Josh Parker, we've seen him a lot throughout the past few years on the service, especially in his time as a pro driver on iRacing. He'll start in 14th position. Cosmo Nishino will start in 15th tonight, with Alan Barr in the field in 16th position. Lucas Polisel will start in 17th spot, with Matthew Slack starting in 18th spot. Nathan Rabideau and AJ Stravato round out the top 20.
It'll be Ty Bass in 21st. 22nd goes to Michael Frisch. Ryan McKee will start in 23rd. 24th goes to Ryan Williams. 25th is Connor Horn. Brian Mercurio, he's one we'll have to watch work his way through the field. He starts in 26th tonight. 27th to Tyler Gary. Starting in 28th is Matt Spalding. 29th is Harry Tiller. And Donovan Strauss rounds out the top 30.
Drivers towards the back of the field, Jack Painter, and happy birthday to Walter. Anthony Burrows starts in 32nd, while Ethan Cortia starts in 33rd position. Tyler Dugan starts in 34th position tonight, with Sam Watson rising up from the bottom splits up to 35th on the qualifying sheets. Kyle Riley and Justin Malil will start 36th, 37th, with Andy Margot 38th. David Schildhouse starts 39th. Brandon Hawken rounds out the top 40, with Noah Carmichael, Jake Poulin, and Adam Cadal rounding out the 43 entrants.
And it's worth noting right there that those drivers starting 36th on back got into this field from provisionals because of their owner's points in this series last season. So 36 on back. You talk about Kyle Riley, Malilla, Margot, Schildhouse, just a couple of names that were awfully competitive last year, but that tells you just how close the times were to get into tonight. So the pace car are going to pull off, and we are going to get 2021 set underway here for the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals. Green flag is out, and it is Worth and Butler, your top two. And right now, not a great start for Jordan Worth as he and Butler about dead even as they work into the corner. But it looks like that high line and Derek Justice, that Baskin-Robbins Toyota, getting right to the back of Sean Butler as they're getting up through the gears.
And already a couple drivers trying to shuffle near 2-3 wide to the back of the field. The question is, who will want to stay up towards the front early on? How about the big push from Derek Justice, bringing Michael Cozy Jr. with them early going? And that moves Sean Butler straight to the point. Worth, it looks like, wanting to maybe try and be in the midst of the pack and save fuel at the bottom of the racetrack.
And that's exactly what Butler's going to do. Is what a great launch by Butler on the high side. And now Justice going to try to go to the high side on his own. Derek Justice trying to look for the race lead as he gets a little bit of help from Michael Cozy as they complete one of 80 circuits for these drivers tonight. Butler to the bottom, and here comes Derek Justice. A great shove from the Starcom racing machine.
And there's exactly where some of the explanation may be for the start there. Jordan Worth now lined up with Sean Butler, looking like they want to be bumper to bumper and stay lined up astern at the bottom of the racetrack. Allow everyone to try and push on and do what they want to do for track position up on the top side. But for Derek Justice, one of the drivers competing in the NASCAR Coco iRacing Series, he almost gets to the bottom, but Michael Cozy Jr. is just able to hold on to the quarter panel.
My goodness, an aggressive move there from the former champion of this series just last season as he about cut across the nose of Michael Cozy there in the middle of 3 and 4. 99 goes to the point as we now have our second lead change in as many laps. Justice the outside, now Michael Cozy holding strong on the bottom.
And that's to be expected throughout the night. A lot of potential for lead changes with this type of package. You're already at the moment, the lead pack, top 20, 1 second, just the difference. But keep in mind, Michael Cozy Jr., someone you have to keep an eye on in 2021, Blake. He's planning on running in Road to Pro in 2021 with Horizon Racing Team and show what he can do in series such as this. We've seen him fast in a lot of the fixed series.
Cozy has been a driver, whether you've been watching some of the different leagues he runs in, whether it's the core league, whether it was this series last season, Michael Cozy is a name that you're going to want to remember here for the next little bit if you plan on keeping up with iRacing at all in 2021. So he'll lead his second circuit around the World Center of Racing. How about Mike McConville right now? He's on the outside pushing Derek Justice, so we don't see quite the two-car tandem that we saw to begin this race. I think managing those temperatures is going to be pretty key. You see right there, McConville just off Justice trying to get a little air to the nose.
Yeah, it's going to be very critical to make sure you don't over push when it comes to these temps. Justice pushed up to the front. It's going to be critical to make sure you don't get too high in the water pressure, as well as when you do go for a bump, do it off center. If you do it off center, you have the potential of having someone bobble towards the inside. Right now, these cars trying to play it nice and safe up towards the front on some of these bumps and try and build up some gaps to be able to keep some air pressure between them, or air gaps rather.
That's definitely what they're doing, although that top lane starting to die out a little bit after Derek Justice went to the bottom side of the racetrack. He now controls the race from behind. You get an onboard shot right there from the back of Michael Cozy's machine. You see Sean Butler and Jordan Worth, who have both been kind of shuffled back. And, you know, this is one of the themes I think we're going to talk about throughout the night, Justin, that bottom lane in particular, you're not going to see a ton. We saw a little bit of it in the Pro Series here just a couple of months ago, that 3 wide can work. You can get that third lane going, but you're going to need a lot of help. And I think for the most part, you're going to see a lot of what you see right now, 2 wide racing.
Yeah, 3 to 5 cars minimum for the third line to work, and it's not as wide compared to, say, Talladega, where you can try and fit it easily. Here, you have to be near picture perfect to be able to slice your way up towards against that safer barrier and make it stick 3 wide without hitting somebody underneath. So it's a fine balancing act on that. But look at that. Mike McConville is going towards the point, and it looks like he's got some help now from Adam Sweet.
It looked like it for a little bit, but just as quickly, Derek Justice going to move out by just about a car length. Again, the series champion in the Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals last season. Derek Justice showing the way here for the brand new eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series rookie. But here comes that GMAC Chevrolet on the outside. Mike McConville, a nice little nod there to either Brian Vickers or Ricky Hendrick. Not exactly sure on that paint scheme, but nevertheless, he's trying to put that thing up front.
Based on the state of New Jersey, he's been having a very solid night so far. We've seen him qualify very well in that race car. It's been nice and consistent so far. Just keeping it up towards the point. Keep the track position, because while some drivers may like to go towards the back, others like to just stay up in front of potential chaos. Speaking of potential 3 wide, how about Josh Parker trying to force a lane? Doesn't get any help as the BC Workshop car of Ty Bass gets back in line with him.
Yeah, it looked like that bright green Interstate Batteries Camry went to test that third line for just a moment, but he quickly got back down. Again, if you do not have help out there, you are going to go to the back very quickly. And as this field is kind of stalled out here through the first opening laps, I don't think a lot of drivers who are right in the middle of this pack would mind too much if they kind of got bounced back. But of course, these drivers just trying to find that track position, and there's always the potential for a big accident. We almost saw it on lap 1 when Justice nearly cut across the nose of Michael Cozy. But of course, we see, I believe back there in the back again, Bar Visuals trying to make it 3 wide there.
And they've had some success here as a sponsor win on the race cars here at Daytona in the past, where we've seen it with Michael Frisch several times, whether in testing for the Cup Series or whether in the Grand National Series. Come away with victories in close photo finishes or thrilling finishes in some cases. It just seems whenever they're on the race car, you can find them up towards the point.
They can, as the field going to work by Adam Codole, who is already worked himself a lap down, and we'll have to chronicle and see how he missed the draft or somehow lost it. But already here on lap number 9, as we come across to get lap number 10 started here early on in this season, 10 laps under green. We already have a driver going a lap down here in the Heifer's Country Cafe 200, but right now nearly a challenge for the race lead, and actually by the stripe, it was Mike McConville that last time by who put the nose of his Chevrolet in front of that Toyota Supra Justice.
Yeah, and this is going to be back and forth, I think, a little bit here as the drivers even out with some of the runs. The bottom side is quicker throughout the corners, but the top line is going to be quicker down the straightaways here. The tough part is how hard drivers like Cozy Jr. want to push and bring the momentum back on the bottom side by the end of the straightaway. So that's going to decide if Mike McConville gets clear, as well as those temps, to see how McConville plays this out on that line. Sometimes your friends are where they find them. Well, Josh Parker, wow, he's making that trying to still get that top line to work, have to say.
It's impressive what he's able to do, but you mentioned there's not a whole lot of help, but I think he is showing these drivers that you can go up there. A ton of drivers look to go there to the high side as they enter 1 and 2. Jordan Worth, it looks like he brings along Timu there on the top side of the racetrack as well. Josh Parker and a couple of others already looking sporty up there. Caden Rush is joining on the battle as well. So could we see here 3 wide for about 4 rows deep? We saw this work in the Pro Series. Once you got this third lane working, you could get it, and it looks like Jordan Worth, he's not content to just sit and ride in line any longer. He's going to try to make that high line work as he works back to the 3rd row and trying to make it 3 wide throughout the field.
And I think right now we're expecting that, and I think this could be where, if they get one more car especially, that 3rd line is going to be in a very solid position. There's still a long way to go until drivers reach their fuel marks in this one. And it's going to be tight on the fuel marks. Keep in mind, we've seen drivers in the past stretch it before to around the halfway mark for this race. It's going to be tight. So many of these drivers, I think, are thinking, let's go to the front. Let's stay up at the front. Let's have some fun and show what we can do pace-wise and teamwork-wise.
Well, you have to think for a number of these drivers, this is really kind of a test, I guess you would say, for the Cup Series race that's taking place.
Oh, trouble!
And Jordan Worth is in the wall. The 46 is around, and that is going to be a majority of the field spinning and crashing as 15 or 20 some odd cars go up in a pillar of smoke here off of turn 4. It started in about the 4th or 5th row, and it would be easier to say the drivers that are not involved here as you see cars scattered and trying to drive away from the carnage. But the first accident of 2021, it is the big one, Justin Prince.
And only a few laps into, my goodness, that's going to really shake up things in the early points. But I think the trigger was around A.J. Henderson, where he's on the bottom and actually made a bit of contact a little bit with the 55 that was above him. And man, that's the risk you have when you go 3 wide here at Daytona, is anyone pushes up even a little bit, you risk whether with differences in between you with the help of things, or whether car to car flat, it can cause massive pileups like this.
It can. I'm just looking at the names here. Cosman Yanishu, Josh Parker, Timu is involved. Jordan Worth obviously was a part of it. Andrew Schwartz, Caden Rush, Warren Rosario, Nathan Rabito, Ryan Naraki, Adrian Stravado, Ty Bass, Dalen Barr, Ryan McKee. I mean, it's really a who's who of in this race that tried to get on by. Not a whole lot were able to survive. A couple of drivers were able to get away unscathed that were there at the back, but I mean, you really either had to be at the very front of this field or the very back to miss it. And again, a huge crash here early on. We're not even 20 laps into this thing, and I think this is it's really going to hurt a lot of these guys' chances of trying to make up those points as we get another nice onboard shot here of this one.
And wow, that's Tiller, who was just able to avoid everything by just finding the gaps and sending it into said gaps. And that's what you have to do sometimes. You either have the massive checkups and hope you don't get hit from behind, or you just find whatever hole you can to commit to it and just try and make it stick. And that time he committed to that said hole. Everybody except for Dalen Barr Pitt. Rich Jamison, believe he missed a stall. Michael Cozy Jr. was the first one out who did have service. 4 tires for Derek Justice and Mike McConville.
And that's what I'm trying to take a look at. I do not believe that Cozy took 4 tires, and no, that is not going to be the case. I believe for Michael Cozy, it was just a splash and go. That's really all the time he would have had to service his race car. But nevertheless, it will give him the track position to stay up front. Dalen Barr, and as you mentioned, Rich Jamison stayed out, but Michael Cozy, Sean Butler, Derek Justice, your first 3 off of pit road. So 2021 gets started off with a bang here in the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals, as we already have the big one here at the World Center of Racing. We'll go side by side as you won't miss a minute of it, and we'll be right back. With you here on STN Racing for flag-to-flag coverage of the Heifers Country Cafe 200. Blake McCandless, Justin Prince, as well as Zach Johnson down in the virtual production trailer here. And we'll be with you for a good amount of races on the FTF Grand National Series schedule presented by Bar Visuals. So be sure to come back week to week as we bring you all the best coverage of this series and all that it has to hold. Because, again, the stars of this series may be the stars that'll make their way to winning in the Cup Series on Sundays. And Already one large accident here, Justin. Actually, we're going to get the lights atop the pace car as we were already set and had the one to go. We were about to get ready to go to the green flag, but it looks like caution flag being thrown for, I believe, a couple of drivers just trying to get caught back up to the field. But you look like about here in the top 10, nobody up here has any significant amount of damage, but there are a fair amount of drivers who very early on going to be trying to keep up as best they can.
There may be 20 clean cars left already in the field, and we're only at 65 laps to go. To put this in perspective, the drivers who hanged out of the back of the field early, like Donovan Strauss, like Kyle Riley, Brian Mercurio, Anthony Burrows, Justin Malone, they're already in the teens and or near the top 10. Brendan Hawken, who started the very near tail end of the field, is plus 33 from getting through the trouble. So absolutely incredible to see this early on in the season. It just, again, weighs the importance of being able to be vigilant, making sure you don't make mistakes when you're 3 wide, especially push up the racetrack, and make sure that you pick your right choice of staying up at the front or going to the back as we get the one to go again.
And also another thing that'll be interesting to keep you on board with this year, although that was a big accident, we did not see any cars roll over here and kind of contribute to our splash and go graphics flip count for the season. So the flip count is still at 0, albeit a number of cars which have sustained significant damage here at Daytona. But that's to be expected here, especially with the field this large. So Michael Cozy, Sean Butler going to be restarting at the front of the field. It looks like both Dalen Barr and Rich Jamison eventually made their way down pit road to surrender the lead to Cozy and Butler. Derek Justice and Mike McConville, who has shown very early on, he's got a pretty sporty GMAC Chevrolet there at the front of the field. And the pace car going to pull on to pit road here in just a couple of moments as we'll work lap number 17. Again, not even at the quarter-mile mark of this race. Cozy going to get us started from the front of the field, and we are once again back underway here as they work up through the gears at the World Center of Racing.
And some poor launches right behind the first couple rows there. Some of them a full car length and a half back. This is going to be where I think a lot of the drivers are just going to find the holes to the bottom if they can. The rest of the drivers, though, they're pretty much stuck up on the top line until it builds up momentum, since it takes a good half of a lap to full lap for the power to build up for that top line.
Absolutely, especially you think about these Xfinity cars, not as much horsepower in them as what we would have in the Cup Series. So even as they work here in a turn 3, you still don't see these drivers get up to 190 miles an hour at the front of the field. And that's with Michael Cozy getting a pretty nice shove from Derek Justice, who could go high if he wanted to. It looks like he has Butler clear for the moment, but it looks like he is just going to tuck in line and stay with Michael Cozy there as they complete this first lap of this restart. Sean Butler, though, nice shove there from Mike McConville as they work side by side. Battle for third that's going on between he and the 026 on the bottom side. I was about to say it looks like Kevin McAdams driving that car because as an FTF Series veteran myself, that's what that 26 would show. But Tyler Gary sporting the 26 bar visuals tonight.
So far looking fairly impressive, keeping that car clean out for the early troubles here. But he's seen with the speed view drivers running 188 miles an hour in the corners, reaching more than 190 miles an hour down the straightaways. So the differential can be where if you get a big enough shove, it can push you forward to just give you that big buffer as Sean Butler gets himself clear. Doesn't look like he wants to try and take it, though. Might want to work with McConville first.
I was about to say, speaking of big shoves, Butler nearly went to the race lead in his Pennzoil Ford Mustang as McConville trying to work with him. He's shoved up, nearly gets turned. Don't know if that was a voluntary reaction there from Sean Butler or not, but nevertheless, he will take control of the race lead, but he's going to go all the way to the bottom side of the racetrack. He's going to block Michael Cozy, and perhaps that was just a bump gone wrong nearly for Sean Butler, but for the moment he has the race lead. But here comes McConville making a run at the stripe.
And remember, we've talked about this already a little bit. If you push too long or too hard, you can blow the engine, especially if you reach a certain mark on the oil and or the water pressure gauges on top of those temperatures. It's all a balancing act to keep those all in mind, and right now, some of these cars looking like they're not paying attention quite yet to those gauges. They will have to in about a couple of laps or so.
They certainly will, and of note, a couple of drivers that looked like their nights ended with that large accident off of turn 4. Warren Rosario and Jordan Worth are still scored 5 laps down. Neither driver has come back onto the racetrack, so you have to believe those drivers took their machines to the garage. Still 2 more drivers scored 1 lap down. Kosmianishu has a bit of damage, and of course, Adam Kodol. He went a lap down during that last green flag run that we had, but they are the 2 drivers that are trying to get back onto the lead lap. I'm sure they'll want to see a caution here in the very short going. Michael Cozy once again up front after he makes a move. Sean Butler goes to the outside lane off of the bottom, and he tries to get another run with McConville, who's been a pretty good pusher up to this point as they're looking behind them, almost 3 wide back there for about 7th. Donovan Strauss and Brandon Hawken nearly get together.
And a bit of carnage towards the bottom as the Carnation car drives on by a couple drivers who both clip the apron. That causes a massive checkup and may open up the door for Brandon Hawken if he still chooses to go to the bottom. Surprised he didn't elect to take it there. Might just want to maybe get his shot at bringing the lad's lefty Carnation car to the point.
He may just try to do that, as that caused a little bit of a lack of formation there on the bottom side. Butler goes to the race lead, that top side, along with Brandon Hawken. And how about Donovan Strauss? Haven't mentioned his name too much tonight. He's now to the front of the field as we work lap number 22 of 80 tonight. So McConville, Hawken, and Donovan Strauss, your top 3 looking to work the outside line. Sean Butler, Michael Cozy, Derek Justice, and Tyler Gary, those front 4 trying to move the train along the bottom.
It's just now a chess match of trying to figure things out, try and find your friends, try and figure out if you want to lead laps, if you want to try and save fuel, and if you pick the right line as well to make sure you keep your momentum going. You don't want to end up picking a long line and getting stuck in a box, essentially. So it's going to be tricky as one car, a bit of a bobble on the top line. Kyle Riley had a massive check nearly hitting the back of him, I believe, was Caden Rush, who is trying to force it through some of these gaps building up in the middle of the lines.
Well, Donovan Strauss right now definitely off center of pushing Brandon Hawken here down the straightaways. Not necessarily looking 3 wide. I think he's just trying to get clean air on the nose while Hawken goes up to push McConville. Now the lead pack will have to work off the corner and work past some lap traffic. That is the damaged car of Nathan Rabito, who is off pace, obviously, after that accident. Sean Butler working both lanes. He goes to the high side. Now here comes Donovan Strauss, who's going to make it 3 wide back there for 5th. And McConville nearly down into Michael Cozy. Just about touched doors as they work it into turn 1. And Brandon Hawken going to get the worst end of that. He's going to get drop kicks there on the outside line.
And that's the nervous mark I was about to mention, Blake, is if you leave too much space up the middle, guess what? The drivers behind you are eventually going to say, I'm just going to force it in between you, make it 3 wide up the middle. And we've seen that already a couple times. That was one of those cases where there were large gaps being left to give some safety, not sidetracked, and everyone else starting to take advantage. Watch Caden Rush. He's thinking of doing the exact same thing right now because there's a full car length between some of these competitors.
There is, and of course that is lost speed for any of these drivers. As you look at the front pack, about 15 or so drivers kind of stacked up there, perhaps maybe even 20, and there you see everybody directly behind this group. They're 2 by 2, about 10 rows deep, and then of course some scattered cars that I think saw what happened earlier and are thinking that it may happen again. But Mike McConville's going to get turned at the front of the field across the nose of Sean Butler. McConville into the chicane. Caution is out as Butler able to keep it on the apron, so a harmless spin as Mike McConville went down and looked to try and take the race lead from Sean Butler, but the 32 was there, spins him around, but it looks like McConville and Butler gonna escape unscathed, and Butler did a nice job there of not slinging his car back up onto the apron in front of oncoming traffic.
Yeah, he was not clear, first of all, but second, I'm wondering if McConville maybe expected Butler to lift there, but at the same time, it depends on driver-to-driver philosophy on, do you let someone early on in the race go to the bottom line that close? It wasn't going to work even if he lifted, because Cozy Jr. was already pushing. Cozy Jr. was already trying to push him clear of him, and just that little tap towards the quarter panel sends him spinning to the grass and into the infield.
Well, in McConville, obviously, being aggressive had worked early on, but unfortunately, it doesn't pan out right there. Butler gets a little bit of damage on the nose of his Mustang, but it is just that, a two-car incident that occurs at the front of the field. Not very often that you can say that. Caution flag is out for the second time. You see McConville, he takes a nice little shot there to the inside wall, so I have to imagine that his 24 machine may be slightly slower here, but could have been a much bigger accident, I think, Justin. When you talk about wrecks happening from the lead at Daytona, you think about the potential chaos that can ensue, but it seems like in that one, Butler a little bit of damage, and obviously McConville into the inside wall. That's all she wrote, so to speak, for this one.
Yeah, that's going to really hurt him, as this is still going to be intriguing how the strategy plays after this caution flag, because we're still outside the window by a good 15-plus laps, Blake. Some of these drivers just topping off on gas, some of them going to take some of their sets, 4 total sets available in the pits for tonight, keep in mind, and that grip can be valuable as time goes on.
It will, as we'll take a look at the race off of pit road. I believe Donovan Strauss may have been the first driver off there, and that is going to be the case. He beats Michael Cozy, at least from what I can see. The JDR Graphics Ford will exit pit road first. Michael Cozy and Kyle Riley, your top 3 as they exit the pit. So working the second caution flag tonight here at Daytona, a 2-car spin to the inside of turn number 3 will slow us down for the second time tonight. We'll go side by side, and you won't miss a minute of coverage of the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals live here on STN.
iRacing is a sim racing game that combines a true-to-life racing experience with an online community of virtual racers from all around the globe. iRacing offers a multitude of officially licensed cars and tracks, laser scanned with millimeter accuracy. Their car models and mechanical systems are based on real-world physics, engineered in cooperation with manufacturers and race teams. Their skill license system ranges from rookie to pro, ensuring members are always pitted against those with similar skill sets. Members are able to sign up for a weekly race series, compete in time trials, host a private race with friends, and participate in racing leagues created and run by the community. With over 170,000 members, iRacing works in partnership with renowned motorsports organizations like NASCAR to deliver virtual races based on the real-life NASCAR Cup Series, as well as many other series on the NASCAR ladder. iRacing also features team racing, providing a variety of options for members to create and manage their own teams. Race with friends or real-world teammates in full-length endurance events like the 24 Hours of Daytona, Spa 24, or the Bathurst 12-Hour. Additional partners include IMSA, World of Outlaws, Supercars, and IndyCar, allowing members to race in their very own Indianapolis 500, Bathurst 1000, Chili Bowl, and many more iconic events. This is iRacing, delivering the most authentic racing experience short of getting into a real race car. Sign up today at iRacing.com.
And back with you here from the World Center of Racing. As you can see, the pace car giving us the 1-to-go signal this time by. Glad to be with you here for another great season of FTF Grand National Series Racing as we get underway. We've been slowed by 2 caution flags so far tonight as we're going to come around and put lap number 29 of 80 on the board. This time by pace car going to pull to the safety of pit road. Donovan Strauss, Michael Cozy leading each respective line. Strauss on the bottom, Cozy on the top side, and we've seen that second lane seems to get some pretty good launches, and it may be the case here as Derek Justice giving a great shove to Michael Cozy, who may just have the race lead by the time they make it to turn 1.
Got it by a little bit, but not enough to close down to the bottom of the racetrack. But Donovan Strauss with a big push from behind as well from Kyle Riley, as well Caden Rush and several others lining up. Some of the Chevys and Toyotas on the top line, some of the Fords lining up at the bottom of the racetrack, and some of the others go 3 wide in the mid-pack.
Yeah, 4 Fords all lined up nose to tail there on the bottom, led by Donovan Strauss, who won the race off of pit road. Cozy now dropping back just about a car length off of Donovan Strauss, and this is where it gets interesting. We saw Sean Butler during this last run, kind of in the position that Strauss is in right now, working the bottom line, seeing when the middle was getting a run, and working it back to the middle to block that line as well. We'll see how willing the 51 is willing to do that, as we see a little bit of smoke in the middle of the pack, but it seems like we're going to stay green. But here comes Kyle Riley, who's not content to ride behind. He's going to try to go for the race lead here.
And looks like Michael Cozy Jr. with enough momentum to push him on nearly right on by and then some in the 62. But just not the right spot to clear on by until right there. So it's just, again, about the right patience here. Keep in mind, these drivers still have to pit to make it to the end on gas. Around that halfway mark is where drivers will have to start looking towards that mark. It's going to be the question of who tries to split off into packs or who tries to stretch it all the way to the end of this run. If we go green is the big key. If.
Of course, that is the big if. We have not had green flag pit stops up to this point. And how about Kyle Riley, who went from 3rd to the lead, used the run on the outside line, and immediately cut back down to the bottom. And now Donovan Strauss going to be taking 3 wide here. Is Caden Rush going to leave him out to dry? That's going to work the top line in. Riley goes back down to the bottom, and Strauss now leaving Michael Cozy and Derek Justice on the outside as he works it back to the middle. So where will Cozy go off the exit of the corner? That is the question, but Caden Rush splits Donovan Strauss, and that's going to create some chaos here in 3 wide at the front of the field.
And Justice all the way towards the back of the grouping. As a result, looks like Tyler Gary is going to go with them towards the rear end. But that brings up Walter towards the front. For Anthony Burrows, his 19th birthday is today. He's now in the top 5 for the first time tonight.
Burrows making his way forward. A couple of new names have worked their way up into the top 5. Noah Carmichael, Anthony Burrows being a couple of those. And now Kyle Riley shoved below the yellow line. And of course, it is worth mentioning that yellow line, it is legal to pass under that line. According to the rule book set forth for these drivers in the drivers meeting, you can go below the yellow line to make a pass. Of course, administration can assign blame for an accident after that, should they see that anything nefarious is going on. But that yellow line beneath it is in play, and we are seeing it shake out here at the front of the field. Burrows not content to just run in the top 5. He wants to go to the top spot. He's got some drafting help from Harry Tiller there in the middle, and Burrows with a nose out front.
And now getting a little bit of help from Tiller. In fact, the Nexus Esports driver, of course, Nexus bringing several competitors to the Pro Series during the wintertime with a chance to go to the Coke Series. But he's now to the point for the first time. Looks like Justice, though, wants to be content on trying to force a 3rd line right now, try and get himself back into the front here after getting shuffled out earlier. That, and there's no holes for him to get back in towards until he gets towards to Brian Mercurio and company there.
And if you get hung out, is a lonely road to try to get back in line, and that is going to be the case with how close and aggressive these drivers are racing each other throughout the night. But it looks like, at least for the moment, they've settled it out front. Anthony Burrows to the top spot. Tiller getting some drafting help from Donovan Strauss. Directly behind him, you have another driver who is just trying to make his way back up to here to the front for the first time, Rich Jamison, who stayed out for a moment to stay in the top 2, but now he runs in the top 6 along with the rest of these guys.
Look who's also in the top 10 now, up inside the top 8 just about, battling with Dale and Barr is Sean Butler. He's cut his way to the pack, and now he's getting wrecked.
Trouble as Dalen Barr looks like, I believe it was Rich Jamison, who looked like he may have came down a little bit. I'm not exactly sure, but Barr poked his nose in the middle 3 wide, and somehow he and Jamison made contact. It spins Barr around. Sean Butler gets collected in that one, I believe the 46, as he was spinning around. That is Ty Bass, who will also get a little bit of damage out of that, and I think that's just a case of aggressive racing gone wrong. I think Barr had established his position there, and unfortunately, it's kind of like what we saw with McConville and Butler there, Justin, where one driver just cuts down, and we'll see it here on the replay.
Yeah, take a look at this. He leaves some space, and then Barr tries to keep it off and bobbled 3-4 times before smacking his quarter panel. Eventually just snaps around and nowhere for Butler to go as he is sent launching into the grass just about. So Butler had to come from the 30s, keep in mind. Like, only for that to happen the second he gets in the top 10. Just terrible luck.
And not very good luck for Sean Butler. Not very good luck for Ty Bass. I believe there was one other car that got collected in that. It may have been the 45 of Lucas Plosel, I think, that also got a little bit of damage out of that accident. So slowed by caution flag number 3 so far. We'll see how many takers there are going to be on pit road, and it looks like all of the race leaders are going to be willing to come down here with about 45-ish laps to go here. So we'll work it here. Another set of pit stops here under caution. We'll see who gets to come out up front. I know Caden Rush overshoots his pit stall. That may cost him a little bit of time, but off the pit road first going to be Anthony Burrows, who retains his race lead. Michael Cozy, Harry Tiller, who will work it out as the top 3.
And now it's going to get really intriguing how the rest of this field plays it if we get a long green flag run, because they still are technically outside the fuel mark by a good couple laps. It might become a fuel mileage race, Blake, as a result of this caution flag if no one gets involved in an incident. That's again the big if. Last time we said the big if, we seen the caution flag just now. It's just been trending towards 15-lap runs so far tonight.
That's definitely been the case, but for plenty of these drivers who are already kind of hanging around in the back waiting for these guys to wreck it up, the potential to save fuel under this green flag run is very alive and well, because it can make a pretty significant difference with how hard these drivers are pushing and shoving up at the front of the field. If you can stay in that draft and even run just 90-95% on the throttle, you can save an entire lap, 2, maybe even 3 if you're really pushing it on fuel. So if we're right around that fuel window, and I would believe that we are when you're looking at about 45 laps or so remaining in this race under the green flag, we could be close to seeing that.
I think so. Absolutely. It's going to be very difficult now. It's to the point where there are cars coming in and topping off. Brian Mercurial, Andrew Schwartz, Matthew Zwack, Justice, Jameson, Frisk, Sweet, all just dunked down, and all are coming down for additional fuel. That's how close we are.
And I was just about to say, when I was wrapping up my point, that we'll see how close we are based off of how many cars who are already in the back of the field come down and top off. And I think we're seeing it play out right here, that these drivers think that even just that little bit that they would have used under a single lap pacing around. We're talking maybe a tenth or two of a gallon. Plenty of drivers viewed it as important enough to come down and top off and surrender that track position. So we're certainly going to be looking at fuel mileage being a part of this race. Should we go green to the end? Of course, that's the big if. And you have to think about the potential, Justin. We do have 3 green-white checkers should we need them to go to the end. So that's something else that, you know, if we do run to the end or have a caution, that's something that these drivers will have to plan for fuel-wise as well.
And I think everyone comes down to that point, too, with how tight it could be if they haven't come in already. And keep in mind, the intensity level, if there's an error caution flag, is going to pick up even higher than what it is right now. And it's been intense. For an 80-lap race, we've seen drivers push like there's 15 laps to go already. This has been an incredible race, to say the least, in terms of the intensity level. You have to think smart, though, if you want to be the one who takes the checker flag.
Definitely need to make it to the end, but Anthony Burrows going to try to do that. He leads the field back to green. We've pretty much seen every leader wait for that green flag to come out. Don't imagine we're going to see too big of a jump early, but again, that second lane, as it has done all night long. Another great start there for Michael Cozy. At least it looks like for a moment, as Anthony Burrows gets shoved back forward by Harry Tiller in that inside line. That really only has about 3 cars, but they are formed up well there. Burrows, Tiller, and Caden Rush trying to go to the top spot, but here comes Michael Cozy, and he has a long line of cars behind him.
And he's got a Horizon Racing Team car right behind him as well, but here comes the rest of the line starting to form up. With all the trouble that's brewing, look at everything else breaking up behind them. That whole pack before had about 19 plus cars separated about a second or so. It's already separated to the point where the top 16 are only within 1 second. Some of the drivers in 20th spot are nearly 2 seconds back, as now underneath the line goes Riley.
And Kyle Riley I don't know if he went to pass or if he got shoved there to the bottom side, but again, that is legal. That is inbound, so to speak. Technically, that yellow line on the tri-oval. So that's just one thing we're really going to have to watch here, because Harry Tiller's in a position right now, Justin, if he wanted to go below that yellow line, he could if he wanted to. Now, we may not make it to turn 3, but it's just something that Burrows, when you think about blocking, you think about that yellow line being in play. With it not being in play, you're just going to have to defend against that. And in the back of your mind, you're going to have to be looking in your mirror and getting ready to go down to the grass to protect it should it warrant it.
Absolutely. And with the yellow line in play, I think we're going to see a lot of that. It's going to be very big, though, who is electing to be daring to do it, especially into a corner, with how tricky and risky it is, where if the driver above you doesn't give space, guess what's going to happen? Calamity corner. So you have to be smart with when you elect to try and do a move like that, and if you do it at the wrong times, it could mean that drivers will not give you that slack if you try it at the wrong times or the wrong moments.
They definitely won't. But again, that is something that is going to come into play here, I believe, especially as we move on. But right now, 15 cars really separating themselves from the rest of the field. Tyler Gary, kind of the back end of this lead pack that, well, I guess you can add Sean Butler and Matthew Zwack that are also trying to tandem their way up to it. But you're definitely starting to see a development of 2 separate packs in this race, whether that's drivers taking it easy or trying to save like we saw earlier, we were talking about before we went green. Maybe that could be happening a little further on back, but you can't save too much, Justin. If you're in that second pack right now and you lose this front pack, well, guess what? That's draft that you're losing. That's less fuel mileage that you're making up. So I can get wanting to save a little bit of fuel, but if that's their line of thinking right now, they might be losing a little bit of ground, and they might lose this front pack. That's not going to help them at all.
It's going to be tricky, and it's absolutely a balancing act, because the further back you go, the more you can save in terms of the pack. But keep in mind, right now these drivers running 47 2s up the front. The next grouping of cars you're referring to, 47 5s to 48 second bracket times in some cases. So I think they just feel it's going to be that tight, where if these drivers push too hard, and it goes green, they could be in trouble and may have to get to where the air cars can reel them back in at the back end. But if they are able to save while maintaining the pace, that is going to be even more big for this type of race. They're running only 188 miles an hour at the very most down the straightaways compared to the 193 into the corners before.
Well, I'm looking at the times that second pack is running, and many of the drivers in still about 2-3 tenths off of what they're running at the front of the field. So not exactly a pace that they would be able to keep up with. Now, granted, there are a couple drivers in that pack that are damaged. There's a couple drivers like Derek Justice who have a clean race car, but they're trying to save a little bit of fuel. But again, I think at the end of the day, you're going to want to catch up to that second pack and then, or lead pack rather, and then you can talk about whether you want to save or ride the bottom and what have you. And plus, look at the racing up front. We may not make it all the way to the end here. We're still too wide up here. Michael Cozy right now in the lead, but much of like what we've seen throughout this race, they are too wide pretty much throughout this field, and there's really no love being lost between these guys as they continue to try to shove each other.
You're just seeing Sean Butler. He's not saving, I don't think, yet. At the least, or wasn't for a good few laps. He was running the fastest laps on the racetrack in the entire race, trying to get himself back to this pack. Remember, he had to come from the 30s again. So Butler may be one of those who needs a caution with how hard he was pushing to get himself here.
Very well indeed, and again, you have to talk about some of the damage he sustained. As we're just going to continue to see cars catch this pack, or fall back to this pack rather, that are severely damaged. We saw another one right there. We see Mike McConville there. He's about 10 seconds in front of this pack. There's really only about 30 cars, I would say, that have the pace to keep up at this rate. The rest of the drivers, through the couple of accidents we've had tonight, have just sustained too much damage to be able to keep up. But from most of what I can see up here, these 15 or 20 some odd cars that are up in this lead pack are ready to go for the time being, as Donovan Strauss now mounting a little bit of a challenge here to Michael Cozy on the bottom of the racetrack, as Strauss looking to try to go to the race lead. He's got a little bit of help behind him from Noah Carmichael, who's been around on the FTF side of things in both NASCAR Racing 2003 season and here in the FTF, was a full-time competitor last season and just trying to take advantage here of what Daytona can give you, a great start to the year.
Same for Sean Butler now. Forced a car actually underneath the yellow line to set up a 3-wide move to get up to Brandon Hawkins' rear end. So a couple drivers now on the aggressive marks. Butler, that's not going to work. Hit the back end of Hawkins trying to force a 3.
I tell you what, Sean Butler is not wasting any time, and that's really been the mantra of his speed weeks. You think back to last week and the blazing qualifying time he put down to start on the front row of this race. I don't think he is waiting at all to try to get back to the front, as he is very willing to make those 2 and 3 wide moves. Again, despite a damaged race car, he's making a heck of a drive out of it right now, as you see the field goes by Mike McConville. But new leader up front, Donovan Strauss, as Carmichael nearly gets into Michael Cozy directly behind Donovan Strauss. Strauss now goes to block Carmichael. Carmichael leaves him to hang, and now Strauss is left hung out to dry as Cozy goes to the bottom. Sean Butler goes to the middle. Carmichael may just clear him all the way to the bottom. Man, Carmichael able to shut the door on Michael Cozy by inches.
Oh, that is a little bit sketchy, and this is going to be nerve-wracking if you're at the front. Cozy Jr. now wants to hook up with his buddy now in Strauss. This has been, again, racing like it's the final laps, and these drivers are still tight on the gas, remember, to make it to the end here. Cozy Jr. back to the point.
And Cozy's got enough of a shove there for Strauss that now Carmichael gets shoved into second on the bottom. Carmichael a little bit of a bobble off the apron, but that clear down to the bottom. I had to hold my breath for a little bit because I thought the pack was about to go around. Carmichael now not exactly lined up with Cozy. That's going to slow up the inside line, move Strauss to the lead, and how about it? Sean Butler looking to the outside of Donovan Strauss, down but not out. Butler now trying to look for the race lead once again.
What a drive and what amount of aggression from Sean Butler for him to push that hard to get up towards the front. Has a bit of help here. Tyler Gary wants to try and help him a little bit here. But Ryan McKee, Matthew Zwack, among the drivers now wanting to see what they can do up in the front of this grouping here. Keep in mind, remember those drivers who are saving gas? Well, they've picked up the pace, and with all this fighting, they're still within drafting range to get back up to these cars.
And that has been the case from the two packs that we had a little bit earlier. It seems that about the top 25 are hanging on to this lead pack of about 15 cars that are stacked up too wide and just doing enough to hang on there. It looks like a couple of veterans, so a couple of guys who may know a little bit of what they're doing. Michael Frisch, Derek Justice, David Schildhaus is a part of this group as well. Sam Watson is at the back of it. So those are about the 25 cars that are caught up here and just hanging on the back of this pack, riding on the inside line. And you'd have to imagine if any fuel saving was going on or necessary, that would be the best position to be in for now. And Sean Butler again having to defend the race lead as Strauss had it at the stripe that last time by, but Butler going to clear himself to the bottom and complete this incredible run back to the front of the field. Butler up into the race lead. And how about the second line dying out a little bit as Butler moves with Strauss to the middle, and now Strauss, oh man, Butler throwing the block, and he nearly gets turned by Strauss.
He does not want to give up this race lead. He's made it very clear here. It's to the point where I think he'll trying to hold on to this lead with how tight it is. This is a dangerous game to play, though. Controlling the bubble is the way it's phrased with how you play it, and that's exactly what he's doing as some of the lights getting ready to turn on this racetrack soon.
Yeah, the light's starting to come on. I don't think it's the first time we've seen a Pennzoil car aggressively defending the lead at a plate track, nor will it be the last. But at least for the moment, Donovan Strauss going to be able to move in front of Butler and have just enough momentum to clear himself to the bottom side. But Butler to the bottom and now goes to the middle, fakes him out, goes back to the bottom, and it'll be Butler at the stripe. My goodness, this Pennzoil car is finding any way, by any means necessary, to get to the front of the field as he jukes out Donovan Strauss to go back to the front.
And now that third line's redeveloping again, it looks like, with some of these cars either wanting to just drop to the back or try and sort things out with how tight this is. Here comes that run, though, again on the high side. Butler really getting hurt by that damage that's killing him when he's in clean space.
Yeah, it really is, and Strauss going to take advantage of that fully as he goes back down to the bottom side of the racetrack. He'll take the race lead, but here comes Tyler Gary. We've mentioned his name a couple of times at the front of the field. Believe he's filling in owner's points-wise for that 26 machine of Kevin McAdams, or he just has the same number on the side. I'll have to clear that up with race control after this one, but nevertheless, Tyler Gary now leading that second line. And when you think about the bottom, it's pretty much the last couple of race leaders that we've been talking about. Donovan Strauss, Sean Butler, directly behind them is Michael Cozy, and of course Noah Carmichael. He's kind of fallen back to where he's fourth in line on the inside, and this is one of the just one of the consequences of going to the bottom. If you get past, you're really just stuck down there, and in Carmichael's case, he hasn't really had anywhere to go for the last 8 or 9 laps or so after getting past for the race lead.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of Daytona, right? Where once you get yourself lined up into a rhythm for a pack, it can take several laps in some cases to get yourself to the position where you build up a run, because it can take that amount of time and momentum. All it takes, though, is one well-timed bump or a couple laps of them to be able to set things up properly. But right now, that's been where some of the drivers up at the front have been able to capitalize on some of these things like Gary, and he's around.
Oh, and that is going to be the entire field as Strauss is around. Gary gets turned. Butler is involved after that great drive. It looks like the 44 of Ryan McKee is involved in that one as well. And all those drivers that were thinking about saving at the back of the field going to be saved, or at least spared some damage in that one, as Tyler Gary gets turned in front of the field and is going to take out pretty much the entire group up there that have been leading and showing the way in this race. Strauss, Butler, McKee, Cozy looks like they get the worst end of it.
A lot of the front runners all night long as a result there, but you had to wonder when that was going to happen. Butler again tried to take a little bit of a peek, just got the very tip of the quarter panel. I think that triggered all of that, and eventually just several cars, hard slams to the safer barrier. Here's another look. There's Butler. He tries to take a little peek, realizes it there, just gets the very edge of the quarter panel, and around goes the pack.
I'd almost be willing to say that was contact between Ryan McKee Jr. and that front-running car of Tyler Gary, who had just nosed his
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of both, where Butler just about got into him and maybe spooked the 44 even. I know the 44 was definitely pushing hard.
It seems like that's the case. You kind of had two things going on at once. You had Butler, who was trying to make his move off the corner. We'll see it in slow motion here. Butler's going to look to the outside to try to go to the lead and take advantage of moving by Strauss. And you see the 44 at the same time gets the 26 a little out of shape right there. And I think both moves combined was enough to send a couple of cars there. Strauss was nearly by it. He gets hooked in the right rear quarter panel to send himself in front of the rest of the field. Perhaps I believe that's the 121 of Caden Rush may have gotten tagged there with the nose. A couple of drivers are able to scoot on by, but it was really both of those moves. Butler going to the middle, and then of course the 44, I think he was trying to shove Gary, but just misjudged it by a hair. And with how these cars behave with these two-car tandems, if you barely misjudge it, that's enough to create what we just saw.
I think it was more towards a third of the back bumper, just taking some more glances. And you can see here, this shows it the best. See, almost got into him right there. You see a third of the way off the center of the bumper. Butler, I think, just avoided getting significant damage to the front end, barely from that, if any. But most of the field now is going to be dealing with damage, and this is going to be fun to see how things play out now with everybody now shuffled again. And some of the drivers with damage not repairing said damage because of, well, there's modifieds up at the front here that are having to sort themselves out here to that point.
Plenty of drivers are going to be joining that modified class here very soon. I believe 32 is at least what I have on my scoring sheet of drivers who at the moment are still on the lead lap. Of course, that list continues to grow shorter as we move forward through this race. But of course, we want to give a shout out if you want to have your program, your brand, your company, your logo sponsored here on this program. Of course, you can reach right out to us at STN Racing. Find us on Twitter at STN Racing. Of course, on Facebook as well. You could give a shout out here to our producer, Zach Johnson, and get your program on the air. Either under commercial or, of course, on our ticker. There's plenty of ways to do it. So if you'd like to reach out to us here at STN Racing, contact us via social media or at STN_racing on Twitter if you would like to do so. So we'll go side by side once again as we work on, or actually no, we got the 1 to go signal, so we'll hold off on that for just a moment. We'll wait till the next caution flag if we get it to do so. But speaking of caution flags, Justin, I think a lot of what we were talking about on saving fuel, a lot of that is nullified after this latest caution flag. I believe for the most part we're going to be able to go to the end without without any issues here. Everybody should be able to go both on fuel and when you think about the potential for green white checkers, should be good to go as well.
Yes, I think so too. Should be good to go on both those marks. It's just a matter of when everyone else wants to go, if you get what I mean, around this racetrack to the point. Because now the intensity level is going to be very high, as well as the fact that the intensity level's already been high. So right now I'd have to say it's been about 10 out of 10 throughout the entire race with how some of these drivers have handled some of the traffic. It's about to get to about 15 out of 10. To put it into that perspective with how some of these cars are going to be wanting to push themselves and shove themselves just about to the front of this field.
And I think you're exactly right. When you think about some names that have really been running in about the back half back half of this field, but have been on the lead lap. Plenty of drivers there that were either saving fuel that last time or just haven't tried to make their way to the front. They know they see the sun setting. They know that time is running out, and we're going to take 23 laps to go when we cross the stripe this time by. Michael Cozy with a little bit of damage on the nose of his Starcom Racing Chevrolet going to lead us to the green flag, and I think he may be a little off the pace as they're starting to stack up there on the inside. A little bit of contact there with Sean Butler as they work it into the corner. I think Michael Cozy is a little bit mangled in that machine, and it is stacking them up here as they exit off and get onto the Daytona Super Stretch.
Massive dent compared to some of the other cars up at the front. I was surprised he elected just to take the gas here, and I think a lot of these cars are just absolutely boxed in here. I think Michael Cozy Jr. is going to be left hanging out to dry here in a moment.
I think you're exactly right. As you can look at the run that Harry Tiller and Kyle Riley get on the high side, and that bottom line is formed up. I just think Cozy and perhaps even a couple of drivers behind him just not able to make it work with the damage. So Tiller going to go to the race lead. He clears himself. He's got a little bit of damage as well, and when you think about Cozy shoving you, he may have some damage. That may not be the best call right there. Kyle Riley now goes to the race lead, a name we haven't talked about directly behind him. JR Motorsports' own Ryan Williams directly behind him as they try to go to the top spot.
Yes, indeed, and nearly getting clear, in fact, and does by a good significant amount is Riley. Keep in mind when it comes to Harry Tiller, though, look at some of the sponsors on the hood. You see that podcast sponsored on the hood of Harry Tiller's car, for example? That's a sponsor that Michael Cozy Jr. runs said podcast with. That podcast may help a little bit on saying, okay, I'm going to help the 01 here since I have a little bit of backing towards this car.
Oh, boy.
Oh, and he blew the motor.
And Michael Cozy's motor has expired in front of the field, and it looks like in the aftermath, two cars spin, but save it. But after the crash, Michael Frisch, Sean Butler going to get turned to the outside wall. And again, that was all Michael Cozy, who you have to believe was pushing, like you said, a car that he perhaps provide some sponsorship to, and you could see the engine expires there. It looked like they had the situation all clear, but unfortunately when they went 3 and 4 wide to try to get around his race car, Caden Rush, Michael Frisch get a little bit of contact there. Sean Butler again was working his way back to the front of the field, and unfortunate for him, he is caught once again in this, and you really hate it for Butler, who has just made so many great drives up to the front of the field. But you're going to see the 99 at the front of your screen right there. You see the smoke. He's trying to keep it on the apron. They're 4 wide there for just a moment, 4 wide again. You see the contact there with the 32 and the 121 is enough to get them spun around. It looked like they had it saved, but then Donovan Strauss comes along. Sean Butler barely gets into the right rear of Frisch, and that's where the majority of this accident happens. You see Shieldhouse has nowhere to go as well.
Yeah, significant damage to his car now as well. Man, oh man. And you have to get the benefit of the doubt to Cozy Jr. saying, you know what, I want to see what I can do. I think I want to be at the front. But at that point, you have to think, I've got damage on my nose. I may as well get it repaired under the cautions. This is a quick EO track, yes, but he could have got a lot of it repaired if he could. It's just a matter of track position, and it ends up biting some cars as a result, trying to dodge him there, where the third line we already seen was already trying to develop.
It was, and like you said, the aggression level ramped up, and I believe it is going to stay that way as we are now under 20 laps to go. You see alongside, or on board rather, of the Gamer Advantage machine of David Shieldhouse, just nowhere to go, gets a little bit of damage, able to kind of scurry through that, but he's been preparing damage. I know this last caution flag, he was sitting on pit road for about a minute or so after they had passed, and I'm sure he'll try to do the same thing under this caution flag. So once again, slowed as the sun continues to set here at the World Center of Racing. The FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals, ready to come to the conclusion of round number 1 after you see this. And back with you here under the caution flag once again, as we're going to get the 1 to go signal this time by. And when we get back going, it will be 17 laps to go, at least the scheduled distance to the end of this race, as the round number 1 of the FTF Grand National Series has not disappointed, much like it did in the last season. Again, the Cup Series race is going to be taking place tomorrow night on bottom split. Myself, Sean Butler, who was involved in an accident, as well as Sam Watson, who currently runs in the 6th position. Going to be live with you for coverage of that event. It is going to be a lot of fun. And a lot of memes. It's going to be some good times there for that series. It's going to have so much star power behind it. As you see Sam Watson riding along there. And Justin, we were mentioning this under caution about race cars that looked like they didn't have a scratch on it. There was really only about a handful that we could come up with. Sam Watson's one of them.
Yeah, him, Riley, I think Williams you can put in that grouping there, Matthews, Wack, and really one more car really in this mixture that I believe is in the teens. That's about it. Everybody else has been involved in trouble here, and keep in mind, one of the options this season is leader has control what lane they want to be in. Top line for Riley chosen here compared to the bottom for every other time so far. Some of these cars, it's going to be intriguing, because if they're the lead car, it could be a bit of a struggle. For some of the other cars, it's to where I think they may be able to get away with some of it.
They might be able to get away with some. We'll have to see. We've definitely seen some cars with damage run up front here and make a little bit of an impact here later on in the going. So we'll just have to see how bad it is as these drivers are ready to see who will win the Heifers Country Cafe 200. As we also want to hear your favorites out there in chat. Who do you think is going to take down the green flag, or the checkered flag rather, in this one? Who will end up in victory lane at the World Center of Racing for round number 1 of the FTF Grand National Series, presented by Bar Visuals? I'm sure Bar Visuals wouldn't mind seeing this car end up in victory lane tonight. Kyle Riley goes to the top spot, and as he takes advantage of a great launch there in the 2nd lane, he's going to get some help from Ryan Williams, with Harry Tiller looking to the outside. Noah Carmichael, he's also back in the picture as well. He's shoved the outside 3 wide. Watson will go beneath him.
And Watson really flexing that speed in the clean race car. There are some drivers with some damage. They're trying to lead that group. Tiller has a bit of scratches and bruises on his respective car. Also a bit of back-end damage for the next car moving up. Ryan Mercurio. He was one of the drivers competing in the Pro Series, trying to get some help from Derek Justice.
I believe that will be a good duo to try to get back to the front of the field, as the top 3 all work it on the bottom. The rest of the field seemingly going to the middle, led there by Jake Poulin. You have to remember, Poulin knows a thing or two about winning big races at Daytona. Is now Riley going to go to the bottom beneath the yellow line? Again, this is legal. Poulin going to pull back down to the bottom. Can they complete a 2-car pass? Williams going to work back up onto the banking. Tiller thinks better of it and goes to the middle, but that's what we're going to see a lot, is one car. It's Watson in the outside wall, but he keeps it straight after contact with Riley. They're scattered 3 wide behind them.
Significant left front damage. You know, Watson's going to hurt his chances there. That entire middle and top line, both have been bottled up as a result there. Now it's the matter of, with 15 to go, when these drivers elect to go, and we've seen go time just about every single lap for some of these drivers. I think now at this point, though, you have to be able to time it up right, or otherwise you might be involved in big-time trouble with some of these moves, as here comes another block.
Yeah, I think so, and you gotta think that after that move on the back straightaway beneath the yellow line, that is going to become commonplace as we get closer and closer to the end of this race. So if you're Jake Poulin, Kyle Riley, anybody on that bottom line, you really have to be aware of what's going on in your mirror, as Poulin will poke his nose out, give Riley some clean air. But here comes Sam Watson, who has a big run on the outside. Sam Watson looking to go to the top spot. Matthews Wack working with him, as they are now 2 by 2, about 5, count them, 6 rows deep.
And Zwack, again, one of those clean cars, one of just a couple now remaining. He's going to utilize that right to the very edge of where he can push with how far right he wants to Watson. Sam Watson to the point.
And Williams going to work on the apron, and that is going to work Tiller into the field, and Mercurio gets turned. Somehow Derek Justice scrapes on through, but there are a number of cars involved in this one. Adam Cadole, Jack Painter, Caden Rush is involved, Tyler Gary, Sean Butler may have just scraped by it with some of his damage, but there are a ton of cars that were involved in that one. As again, we saw action beneath the yellow line going on, and I think that was a case, Justin, of being pushed. Williams was the third car in line. He gets out of shape onto the apron, and after he tried to collect it, there was just nothing he can do. He comes up into Harry Tiller. You'll see it once again right there. That 0-1 shoots up the track and into Brian Mercurio, who in turn gets a lot of the field. But Derek Justice, man, what a move to get by that.
And there is a big rule when it comes to racing at super speedways, regardless of the series and car. Don't push the pusher. And that's exactly what I think happened there, where he was already in the back bumper. Tiller was somebody got the push, and that just led to the bottle effect there. But wow. Bit of more damage, I think, potentially for Justice to back into somebody, but able to avoid significant damage by cutting by 4 different cars wrecking to his sides.
A lot of cars spinning here. Tyler Duggan was involved in this one. AJ Stravado gets a heavy amount of damage in this wreck. Brandon Hawken also got driven into. David Schildhouse looks to be in this one as well. Just not a good night for the driver of the 20 machine, and not a really great night for any of these drivers, Justin, as we continue to work along. I know last caution flag we counted probably about 4 or 5 drivers that hadn't seen significant damage. Really, I'm looking at about the top 5 or 6, and I think that's all that you can account for here at the front of the field. Sam Watson, Matthew Zwack, Jake Poulin, Matt Spalding. I don't think we've mentioned his name once tonight. He runs in 4th. Kyle Riley, Noah Carmichael. Those are about the best cars that, at least with the naked eye, that I can see that are still left out on the racetrack.
Race control has told all the drivers involved in the incident, by the way, they must come down and repair the damage. So that's where some of those cars coming in are needing to come in, including Justice, Rush, and company. But now, I honestly don't know if you can even pick anybody who can win this race until someone takes the checkered, honestly. It's been that type of night of unpredictability on where some of the moves have been coming, where some of the runs have been going, as well as how aggressive some of these cars have been. It's been tricky at this point. The rule specifically, by the way, is if you're missing a part, such as a hood, a rear panel, say your front bumper, you must attempt to repair the damage, and that's what some of the cars involved just had happen for those respective competitors. While others, they came in because, well, there's massive dents to the back end of some of these bumpers to this point, which can also cause chaos for some of these pushes, as you see some of that damage getting repaired for some of these cars.
It can, and you see the 24, one of which skimpering along there. You see the 0-1 of Harry Tiller there repairing some damage in his pit box. But I'm going to mention this name. I found another car. I don't think we've mentioned his name once tonight, and I don't want to jinx him, but I got to do my job. How about the 53 of Justin Malillo? Up front when it counts, as we're going to work at just right at 10 laps to go when we get started back under the green flag. There is not a scratch on that Jegs.com machine. And I tell you what, Justin Malillo, he is experienced on these plate tracks. He typically runs well. When you look back at FTF history, doesn't matter if it's iRacing, doesn't matter if it's NR 2003, you're likely to see JM up front, and he is right in the right position at the right time. And when even looking at some of these cars up front, I don't think there's a cleaner one than this Jegs Mustang that's up here in the top 10.
I think you're right. And that's incredible with him, where he's had to dodge every single wreck tonight, which is absolutely incredible that he's been able to do it successfully without getting damage. He's been in as far back as the 20s and the 30s with some of the drivers with significant damage even in some of these packs. But now, I'm curious who we can find help from to get a big push towards the front here, because it's not going to be easy to cut through these cars, and I think drivers like Sam Watson are going to be blocking like crazy to try and hold on to this race lead.
They are, but again, it's just going to be interesting to see the battle between cars that are slightly damaged. And I mean, even Sean Butler, we've talked about how many accidents he's been in. He is still in 12th right now. Has a little bit of damage, but is still running in 12th and has enough cars along with him that have some damage. You could still look at a potential top 10 in this race if things fall your way. But Pace Guard's going to pull on to pit road here. 10 laps left here in the season opener for the FTF Grand National Series presented by Bar Visuals. Sam Watson leads them to the green flag. Matthews whack a little slow off the launch in the outside line. Jake Pullen going to get to the back of the 28, give him a shove, almost gets him out of shape, but they end up making it to turn one. Zwack just, it seems like that NOS energy machine may have some damage to it. He does not have the giddy up that he needs, and man, that bottom line is cooking right now.
It also doesn't help when he tried to clear himself, but look at this big shove. Riley now pushing the 0-0 on forward as Malillo trying to think about where to go.
And a big bobble out of Donovan Strauss. It looks like he had a little bit of contact with Matthews Whack, but they're able to sort it out. Riley goes to the high side. Pullen going to fall on back without any help. Can Kyle Riley move down to clear? He's not going to take the opportunity, but shoves out front. So Kyle Riley to the race lead. Butler and Ryan Williams, meanwhile, back in the field trying to make that high side work 3 wide.
How is Butler up at the front? I don't know with that thing. That whole front nose is demolished. I'm surprised he's been able to drive his way as far as he has. I don't think that line's going to work, though, with him bouncing off other cars.
No, I don't think it is either, but you have to applaud the effort there for Sean Butler, who's trying to move along here. But Jake Pullen up to the front of the field. He now gets the shove that he needs from Sam Watson on the inside. Riley still blocking Donovan Strauss, and Strauss has been awfully sporty. Not sure when he'll decide to make his move, but 8 laps to go. That time at the stripe, Kyle Riley has it by just a nose.
And I think right now, it's just about trying to plan out the moves. That top line just has little momentum, very little momentum. That bottom line has some of the cleanest cars left in it. Here comes Watson.
Here comes Watson to the outside again. About 17 cars in this lead pack, and that is it. But Watson, a big power move up the middle to try to take the race lead. And Watson and Pullen now going to be side by side. They are dead even. I wouldn't give an advantage to any driver, but Kyle Riley has cleaner air on his nose. And I think that's one thing. If you lead at some point, you can give a longer shove because your temperatures are cooler, and it looks like Watson going to take advantage of that as he works up onto the nose of Kyle Riley. Nearly has Pullen clear as they work it into 1 and 2.
And I think Malillo's thinking the same thing, trying to back up a little bit, trying to build it up for a run off the corner to try and battle with the 0-0 here. The 0-0 also a big part of this series and its history. And now Malillo's over the back bumper. Now Watson getting ditched, in fact, and this is about to get chaotic.
Oh, Kyle Riley goes to the high side, but unfortunately he had nobody that went with him, and you can see perfectly right there, went from about leading the race to all the way outside the top 10 in a matter of seconds. So if you're going to make that move to the front, you better be ready to have somebody go with you. But up front, Jake Pullen, and I don't want to mention him too early, but how about Justin Malillo there on the bottom giving some help to Jake Pullen. Sam Watson trying to defend from Donovan Strauss on the outside.
And I don't know how they haven't gotten into a major incident with how aggressive this has been so far. Coming up to 5 laps to go this time. Justice with that demolished back end coming up. He's going to be hard to try and push now with that crater back end. Some of these air cars might be just relegated to pushing rules here.
They just might be, or they may try to make moves themselves. Malillo with a little bit of a wiggle as he gets a shove from Ethan Corder, who runs directly behind these few. A solid run for the 818 machine going on right here in the top 10 as they work now 5 laps to go here at the World Center of Racing. Sam Watson, Jake Pullen doing battle. Your front 2. When will we see 3 wide? I believe it's coming, and you have to remember that yellow line it is not a factor. You can go beneath it, I believe, in the next lap or two. We'll see a move down there here on the backstretch. And oh, trouble! One car is around. It is the 49 machine who spins, and that is going to bring out a caution. Just as we were working into the end of this, it looked like Noah Carmichael gets turned off the nose of the 24 of Connor Horn, right in front, or right at the very tail end of this pack, and that is going to bring out the caution flag once again and set up a crazy finish.
That's the ERL champion getting involved there. Connor Horn just in the checkup effect, hooking Noah Carmichael. Several cars, believe, were sent sliding all the way towards the grass where they had to try and save it when going near full speed onto the banking. But you see right there, a bit of that snake effect start to build up. Gets off center, enough to hook him. Bam, hard into the wall.
And again, this happened at the very tail end of pretty much everybody that can keep up. There was certainly a second pack that is formed of mangled cars there at the back of the field. But this really just happened at the tail end of our race leaders. And we'll get another look at it once again here, working on board down the Daytona Super Stretch. You'll see exactly how it unfolded. Big checkup right there. And obviously you can see, I think, another case of pushing the pusher gone awry. As you can see, right into the nose of the 49 is that machine. And I believe I'm getting word from race control that, yes, it is David Schildhaus. And, you know, I may make our producer, Zach Johnson, do a little bit of work here to just look at the machine that Schildhaus is wielding right now, but he is going to be given the lucky dog. Look at that car. It's going to be battling on the lead lap here for the last couple of laps of this race.
Give him credit. He's still moving, but I think that radiator may actually fall out of the race car at this point with how low that's dragging. But in all seriousness, it's that type of situation where you're just fighting for points at this point and hoping for absolute madness. There have been historical calamity-filled finishes here at Daytona. We might be on the way to one of them.
We just might, and it'll especially be the case if we work into our green-white checkers, which I believe, since the lights are still on the pace car, that we will get our first one here to start this race. Yep, lights are still on the pace car. We'll get the one to go at lap 79, so believe this will be the first of 3 green-white checkered attempts that these drivers will try to make it to the end. So the way that will work, of course, is if we have a caution flag on the first lap of a restart, we'll try to rack them up and do it once again. We'll take attempt number 2 and attempt number 3 if necessary. If we take the white flag, that will be the end of the race. We will, or if we take the white flag, we will race it out to the end. No yellow flag will slow us, and we will race it all the way to the checkered, regardless of what happens on the racetrack. So we'll see if we can make it an entire lap. Again, these Xfinity cars, they take quite a bit of time to get up to speed on the backstretch. So we'll see if they can get the full song and keep it together for what could be a very exciting finish up here at the front of the field. It looks like our top 4 restarters going to be Jake Poulin. Looks like he'll have control of the race lead. Sam Watson going to restart in second. Donovan Strauss in third. And Justin Malillo, still not a scratch on that UFI machine, is in fourth. Matthew Zwack and Ethan Quarter round out your top 6.
Don't forget Matt Spalding still back there in 7th. Derek Justice, one of the North Forest drivers, still in the top 8, surprisingly, with some of the damage on his car. Kyle Riley still has quarter panel damage, still in the top 10. Ryan Williams also back there with a bit of damage to the back end. And Sean Butler is still kicking and screaming from 11th spot. How about this as well? One of the drivers involved in some of the earlier incidents had to start from the pit lane for this race. Was 1 lap down at one point. Adam Cadal is inside the top 12.
And he doesn't have a whole lot of damage, at least from what I can see on that machine. So he might just be able to keep up here and salvage a good day. Like we mentioned during that green flag run, he missed the start to this race, went a lap down early, but he has kept at it, and he may escape with a good points finish here. And again, with how important these points are going to be, again, we had 139 drivers take a time in qualifying for this race, and we whittled it down to 43. Just being in this race alone, owners points, that is all going to be a factor in this race. So every point is going to count, particularly once we move towards 2021 owners points in this series. So pace car going to work on the pit road. Green white checkered attempt, 1 of 3 about to commence. Jake Poulin, your race leader, and he gets a good jump, but I don't know if that's a good thing. Poulin out by about a car length over Watson and Donovan Strauss as they work it towards turn 1. Poulin weaving up at the front, and here comes Sam Watson. He's got a shove from Justin Malillo on the outside.
And yes, you were right. That was not going to be good in terms of the speed. In fact, checks up that bottom line. But now some of these tandems starting to figure out where do they go? How big of a run can they get? Where can they try and poke their nose to try and get themselves to the lead?
That is the case. Remember, the yellow line is in play here. You can go beneath it if you want. Into 3 and 4. They're finally up to full speed. If we get to the white flag, we will see it through to the end. Watson off the corner. Malillo looking for a way around. He gets into the back of Watson, gets him sideways, but that's all we need to see. White flag in the air. One more trip around. Williams trying to make the high side work with Kyle Riley.
Now it's the matter of who can try and get a work towards the back straight away here. Some of the momentum on that middle line starting to die out a little bit. Will Donovan Strauss keep to the back into the 0-0, or will he try and continue to work with them?
That's going to be the question here. Donovan Strauss to the back of Jake Poulin. He's giving him a shove for now, but a bigger shove for Watson and Justin Malillo. Into 3 and 4, dead even are Jake Poulin and Sam Watson as, Watson is up and into the groove. Watson gets turned right in front of the field, and almost like a repeat of the Firecracker 200, Jake Poulin on his lonesome is going to come across the line and win here at Daytona. Jake Poulin, your winner of the opening round of the FTF.
It's now getting wrecked
once again at Daytona. And Hellman's machine gets turned hard in the outside wall as Caden Rush is able to get home second. Adam Codol, as we were talking about earlier, finishes up in third. Ethan Corder in fourth. How about that? Harry Tiller in a modified finishes up in fifth. Some great stories in this race, but at the end of the day, one wrong move there through 3 and 4. Believe some contact that was made as Malillo was trying to shove Watson. Watson got a little out of shape, and obviously at the end there, you're not going to lift. Malillo and Watson get together once again, and that's just that's all she wrote. The field goes around, everybody piles in, and at the end of it, Jake Poulin is able to escape and go unchallenged through to the start-finish line.
And the iRacing employee is the only one in the entire field, I think, who had a clean car before, well, turn 1 and 2. But man, talk about timing up the runs right and talking about controlling the field late. He was able to avoid the carnage and ends up winning the race.
He does, and he'll do some burnouts here on the front straightaway. The victor of the Heifers Country Cafe 200. And oh, by the way, if that win should matter and you believe that Jake Poulin, that win is going to get him into the FTF Grand National Series playoffs. So a big one at that to start the year. Jake Poulin is your winner tonight at the World Center of Racing. Caden Rush, a great rebound for him after he was involved in that late accident on the back straightaway. He finishes up in second. Adam Cadol, an ultimate rebound effort, starts dead last in the field and finishes up in third. Ethan Corder, a great run for him. He finishes up in the fourth position. Fifth goes to Harry Tiller. Sixth is Lucas Ploso. Not a whole lot that we mentioned about Lucas tonight, but he brings home a solid finish. Tyler Duggan finishes up in seventh. Eighth goes to the man they call Fat Timu. A great run for Timu. Ninth goes to Derek Justice. Kyle Riley rounds out the top 10.
And 11th, Ryan Williams in a chaotic finish. The Hurricane A.J. Henderson, a quiet run into 12th spot, where Sean Butler ends up finishing in around the 13th position. AJ Stravato, very quiet run today from 20th to 14th. Tyler Gary was one of the drivers up towards the front, early 15th. Donovan Strauss, involved in that last corner wreck, finishes in 16th. Mike McConville, after leading some laps early, finishes 17th, while Brandon Hawk and Anthony Burrows and Andy Margot goes from 38th to 20th.
21st was Matt Spalding. Finishing in 22nd was Andrew Schwartz. Ryan Naraki brings it home in 23rd. 24th goes to Adam Sweet. 25th was Brian Mercurio. 26th, unfortunately, after that late race wreck. Looks like we cursed him, Justin. Malillo brings it home in 26th. 27th goes to David Schildhouse. Of course, he had a lot of damage there at the end. 28th to Noah Carmichael. 29th was Connor Horn. Sam Watson, he'll be in the broadcast booth with us tomorrow night, but he'll have to recover from a 30th place finish in this one.
Yeah, what a finish to this one. Watson had a strong chance until, well, calamity struck. Matthew Zwack had a chance at 1.31st. That's where he finishes. Rest of the field, multiple laps down. Rabideau, Cosmini Ashino, Painter, Jameson, Michael Cozy Jr. with a blow motor, 36th. Frisch, 37th. Then McKee Jr., 38th. Dalen Barr, 39th. Ty Bass in 40th. Parker, Worth, and Rosario round out the entrants tonight.
They round them out, but again, nobody happier than our winner here tonight in Victory Lane. Jake Poulin once again showing and flexing his muscles here at Daytona. And Jake, it was a crazy run there those last couple of laps. You got to the bottom when you needed, got the cautions, but then just walk us through what you saw that last lap on that restart coming to a green-white checkered.
So I wasn't sure what to do because I'm usually never at the front of these plate races, so my philosophy there was they're going to get a run on me no matter what I do, so I tried to get a quick jump on the restart and hope that they caught me in the middle of the corner, and it kind of just worked out perfectly.
It certainly worked out for you, but talk about also starting this season with the win right out of the gate. Obviously, a lot of hype has been built over the offseason here for FTF, not only for this series, but the Cup Series happening tomorrow night. There's been a lot of buzz about FTF. How does it feel to kick off really the season for the entire league with the victory here tonight?
It just feels great. Like, it's been so much stress the past couple of weeks trying to manage everything. I'm sure everyone knows I'm one of the admins of the league, so it's a lot of work getting everything managed, setting everything up. So it's nice just to feel good about a race for once instead of just being stressed.
Well, speaking of stress, you get that win. You're looking forward to the playoffs. What kind of stress does that lift off of your shoulders already, not having to worry about maybe working your way into the postseason?
That is great because now I can just run the whole season for fun and I don't have to worry about points.
It seems to be a good case for you. Well, Jake, congratulations from us. Obviously, we'll be riding along for many races this season, so we wish the best of luck to you in that. Obviously, if you're partaking tomorrow, we wish you luck as well. But great finish to this one, and congratulations on putting that Hellman Chevrolet into Victory Lane.
Thank you, and I also want to thank Ryan Williams for the paint scheme and the bright green rims, and the whole Junior Motorsports Junior team. We're going to head back to the 24 Hours of Daytona to finish our race now.
Well, that's true. We'll let you get onto the road course there. You tackled the oval, so hopefully you can tackle the road course as well. That is Jake Poulin, your winner tonight, representing Junior Motorsports Junior, as he so termed it. But coming up just a little bit short, he escaped out of that chaos that was that last caution or that last wreck off at the corner. But Caden Rush, after being involved in a late incident, he brings it home in second. He's standing by with Justin Prince.
Yes, indeed. And first things first, Caden, what was it like going through the chaos that was turn 4?
Me and Sean had a run there, and he told me to stay hooked up with him, and I told him that I was going to need to if we wanted to do anything. And I was expecting a wreck, but I wasn't expecting second on back to just junk it. I was just looking for any gap I could. I was trying not to push Sean into the wreck and spin him around, but I was also trying to get as much as I could there, and it was just chaos. I think I hit just about everything but the hot dog stand that race. There was not one panel on my car that didn't have damage.
How tricky was it to try and play the lanes, find some friends, try and get people to work with for this type of race tonight?
I think the setup kind of made it a little bit harder to make moves. It definitely was an interesting race. It seemed like the third lane wasn't really much of an option, but some people did get it to work. And overall, it just kind of seemed like finding people to work with was a big deal. I know Sean was super good all night, so anytime you were around him, you kind of wanted to follow him. And there was definitely a couple other people you wanted to take their cues. And luckily, we just came out with the second place there. So even though I'm not full time, it still feels good.
Okay, on that note then, with you being not full-time, what's the plan now for the rest of the season to approach this series?
I think we're going to probably aim to run the races that we feel like we have a shot at, probably most of the short tracks, any dirt races that pop up on the schedule, and probably whatever remaining Super Speedway races pop up on the schedule. Definitely looking forward to the duels tomorrow. I'll be in Duel 1 starting 16th in the 17 car, so hopefully we can have a good season in Cup. It'll be an interesting mix between the COT package and the Gen 6 low and high downforce at certain racetracks.
It's going to be absolutely interesting indeed, to say the very least. Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on the second, Caden.
Thank you.
Caden Rush going home in second, Blake.
Well, Caden Rush comes home in second, but perhaps one of the more interesting stories that we chronicled tonight was the drive from Adam Cadole, who started again 43rd, missed the grid, went a lap down early, still brings it home in third. What a long night it was for that 33 team, but you bring it home in third. How does it feel, Adam?
I don't know what to feel right now. Luck, just the drive to get there. That was awesome.
It certainly was. And, when we were talking about a lot of cars there at the front, at the end, yours was one of the cleanest ones out there. So once you got back onto the lead lap, what was kind of your thinking? For one, you kind of feel like you're lucky to be there. But aside from that, I guess you were just able to make your way through all those crashes that we saw.
Yeah, because pretty much 80% of the race, I was 39th place, 30, somewhere in the 30th, whatever, a lap down. I had damage almost all race. It took me a good couple cautions to actually fix everything, from lap 12 when Andy Margot came off the wall and hit me, and then I bounced back from that, and I felt like I got set back again from when the wreck happened on the backstretch on lap 76 with the 24 coming down and hit me on my right side. But I just decided to stay out, and I said, you know what? If something happens and I luck into something, I'll get through it, hopefully. And I guess I did.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. But starting out this season, we mentioned the amount of drivers that took a lap to try and get into this race. I believe 139 by my count. Getting into this race, starting out with some points, and with how important owners' points are, how important is it to start out here at Daytona where, whether it's been an iRacing or NR 2003, it's important to have these good runs early on in the FTF season, it seems.
You get these good runs early on. You don't want to fall into a sense of security for the rest of the season, but it gives you a good jump start to just give you the motivation to keep going for the rest of the season. You got a few bad finishes here and there, but if you start off great, you've got that drive to just keep going, and you feel like you can actually do good in every other race.
That's always good to have. Well, Adam, we'll throw you the mic one more time. Anybody want to give a shout out to? This is your chance to do so.
Oh, my family, my daughter, she just turned 10 3 days ago. Everybody watching, my parents, and I wanted this for everybody. I wanted to actually do good for people watching, and I mean, whether I lucked into it or not, I guess I actually did something right, and I missed everything, and I just thanked all the FTF crew for having me and getting through all the speed bumps to get through here, and I'm still shocked. I don't know what to say.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but nevertheless, I'm sure you'll take it. Third place sounds like a good way to start the season. So, Adam, congratulations on that, and hopefully we'll see you around here in the booth a little more throughout this season.
Oh, you bet you will.
And that is Adam Cadole. He brings it home in third tonight. And Justin, I'll throw it to you for some final thoughts. I think the chaos lived up to the bill, but I know moving past Daytona, it's exciting. But I'm really excited before we get going next week. Obviously, we got the Cup Series running tomorrow night, also here at this racetrack, and I think that one's going to be a sight to see as well.
I think so as well, as we've seen drivers have a lot, and I mean a lot, of take for tonight to try and push the rayon forward. And it was an insane race, to say the very least. Drivers really wanted to flex their speed muscles and try and get track position by any means necessary. That being said, it was an exciting race throughout and a big moment for Jake, absolutely, to be able to come away with that victory in what was almost similar fashion to some of the finishes from the early 2010s here at Daytona for the winner of the race. What a race. I can't wait to see how the Cup guys do things starting tomorrow.
It's going to be awfully exciting. Of course, coverage for that will be tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Bottom Split. But we appreciate you joining along for the ride with us tonight here on STN. And that is going to wrap it up for us here. For my broadcast partner, Justin Prince, and for Zach Johnson down in the virtual production trailer, I'm Blake McCandless saying so long tonight from the World Center of Racing, where we bid farewell and congratulations to your winner tonight, Jake Poulin, once again. And we'll go ahead and send you guys over to Anthony Alfredo, who's competing in the 24 Hours of Daytona right now with NAS Boys version 2. I think they're just about to hit the 12-hour marker. Believe maybe just a little bit off there, as that session got going at about 12. Green flag probably about 12:40. So they're about to hit the halfway point. Why don't you ride along with him, Garrett Smithley, Landon Castle, that entire team, as they try to win their respective split in their LMP2. So we'll send you on over to them. And again, we advise you to tune in to Bottom Split tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern for coverage of the FTF Cup Series. But until then, good night, everybody.